holding on to Bruce.
Yeah.
And, of course, the claws were still clipped and or packaged together. And so
Not a swimmer. I'm not particularly fond of water, and being in
Hello and welcome to Chesapeake Today. It's your Executive Director, David Loop.
and Candace Montgomery, Director of Life Enrichment.
Candace, we are into October.
I know.
And last week we were into crustaceans.
Yes.
I don't
So
know.
what a neat event. So I don't know where you want
Oh,
to go,
good,
whether we're going
thank
to
you.
start with that or something else.
I think we should start with that. I mean, that was so much fun. And I think opening it up to guests this year was just extra special.
It was, and I think they really enjoyed it. I know talking to several of the residents and their family members, they're like, wow, what a meal. And I wasn't here because my son was visiting for a couple of days, but I saw the pictures of the Cornhuskers.
Yes. Oh, my goodness.
So how many ears of corn did you guys?
Well, we did 5 cases.
Okay.
So however much was in a case. But let me tell you, 20 minutes and these folks were done. Yes. I was shocked. I had devoted like an hour and a
Now,
half.
did any of them have any tricks to get all of the hair off?
Well, let me tell you, Mr. Blanks, Bill Blanks,
Yeah.
was the champion. I mean, the arm strength, and he had it down to a science. I told him he had to have done this in
Yeah.
the past, and he said yes, many a times that he's had to do that.
Yeah. So this is not one of your good trivia questions, but do you know how many hairs there are on an ear of corn?
No.
Well, it's not a number,
Yeah.
but it's equal to how many kernels there are.
Oh, interesting.
Because each hair represents where a kernel was formed on that ear.
Wow.
Now, someone's going to correct me on that, but I think I'm pretty good about my farm roots.
Yeah.
So that's it. So the whole process of how it's developed, but that's an answer.
Right, and residents kept talking about how good the corn was, so we credited.
I did too.
to
Mary
us.
Jane Peak, I was chatting with her last week, right after the lobster fest. She said, "Oh, and the corn."
I know.
And you know, when you think about this time of year, for Bruce to have been able to locate corn
Yes.
that came as tasty as it was,
Right.
so wow, so very good. I had someone who came to me and said, "David, even better than last year."
Good.
And I said to Chef Julian, had to praise him. It was his
Right.
first year.
Yeah, it is.
And then, of course, Jack White's merely asking a question, so why aren't we doing this once a week, once a month, whatever? Of course, Jack's going to ask that question.
Right. Oh my goodness.
But I think then the answer is you and Bruce are thinking of more events.
Oh, most definitely. I've been working with Julian too. We've got endless opportunities that we can,
And it's just such a
collaborate.
natural. When you think about, last week as an example, where you've got this fun food, and I say fun, enjoyable, delicious. But when you get in there, and we're getting aprons on everybody, and I know it's a delight my son being there. Your son came last week, saw your husband.
Oh my goodness.
Neat to get more people here and involved, but just creating that experience. And at the end of the evening, we're all messy. We got that extra lobster stuff on us, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's something about all of the team coming together too, and a newfound respect for servers and all that they do on day in and day out,
Yeah.
serving that amount of residents. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and as the residents, I think, realize, think about it. When you sit down in large groups, we almost seated everyone at one time in First Regatta Grill. Chesapeake Room was seated, then Mariner's Room.
Yeah.
And for the kitchen to produce that assembly line, because it had to be, because when you were dropped your meal and it was served to you, I mean, it was like the table, and that's a lot at once. So I know they worked hard to give you quality, et cetera, and just good meal.
Yeah.
And then Ruby shortcake.
Oh my goodness, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
If there wasn't around 250 portions leaving the room, going somewhere back for the dessert the next day,
Oh
I'd be
my
surprised.
gosh. I mean, and the size of it.
Yeah. Well, Judy Byers, I heard you. Judy was saying, well, David, this is at least twice this. Now, Judy, I know you're a good registered dietitian, and we blew the calorie count on
Yeah,
that shortcake. But, Judy, I also remember, and I'm putting it on video now, next year I have to stand behind you when yours is served, and I've got to prepare your lobster for easy eating.
Okay.
So next year I will help Judy out. So,
Okay.
anyways, I had to make
Yeah.
a pledge. So now we've put it on recording, so I'll have to remember.
Right.
Good. So neat event.
Yeah.
You had the balloon set up. Got some pictures taken.
Yes, yeah, we had a nice little photo booth, which was just so much fun. I mean, a few people stood out to me of families with bringing their kids in, and just like it kind of takes you back to just old school Polaroids because they actually got a printout picture. So they all were very fascinated with that because Polaroids are making a comeback. So just lots of fun. It's always nice to see the residents come together for one united front.
Yeah.
You know?
And seeing that, it was a great one. All right, your son, his first name is
Clint.
Clint. So seeing Clint, and then I think Bruce gave you a little extra tour into the
Oh, my
kitchen.
goodness.
So what happened?
Yes, I was not even anticipating that. So as soon as Bruce saw Clint, he immediately was like, "Does he want to see a live lobster?" I was like, "Okay, we'll see." You know, so he took us back to the kitchen and got them out of the cooler, and I was holding my son because I wasn't sure exactly his reaction. So he couldn't have leaned back any further. As
So
soon
did
as,
Bruce
oh,
like
he
pick
picked
it up right in front of your
let
son?
him, you know, Bruce was holding it, and the little tentacles or whatever they
Yeah.
are were holding on to Bruce.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course, the claws were still clipped and, or you know, packaged together. And so that was very interesting. But Clint was talking about it all last night when we got home, of telling
Yeah.
my husband about it. And but then it was a lot of questions that were a little bit tricky for a parent of, okay, so it's alive now, but then what happens? They're eating it, you know. So it was a lot of in-depth thinking that he was doing
Yeah.
there.
Processing, that's fine. Well, I had to sort of say, think about our two stories from last week. Here, you could bring your son and you have an experience like that.
Sure.
Happened to be my son, Nathan,
Yeah.
visiting. And believe it or not, years ago, he started at a retirement community
No.
as a baby. I mean, all of my
Yeah.
career, and I have pictures of him coming.
That's so
And
nice.
at one point in time, my sisters and I, and our collective 16 children, we did an annual Christmas program at retirement communities where I worked.
Oh my goodness.
And we called ourselves the Von Loop Family Singers. So my son and all of his nephews, or his cousins, I should say, my
Okay.
nieces and nephews,
Yeah.
we had them all get dressed up, and they would come and sing.
Oh,
And to this
wow.
day, you know, now young people, parents like yourself and older, talk about, oh yeah, we remember our days of coming to visit,
Right.
you know, Uncle
Yeah.
David's retirement community, wherever. So,
Cool.
but again, on the flip side, just think about also with Nathan making that career track of now being in the senior living community.
Yeah.
You never know about Clint.
I know.
You may be giving him a future that you never anticipate.
I love that. I love that. And he always likes coming here too. He'll say, "Is that where the residents are?" or things like that. So I think it is good to start them
Yeah.
early, especially kind of changing the mindset of what senior living is.
Absolutely.
A lot
well,
of people
and
think
it's
nursing
and even
home.
of aging.
Oh,
I
sure.
look at my children and I think even for myself how I became so much more comfortable and the
Sure.
conversations and the richness of what you can learn
Definitely.
from individuals that may be a few years older.
Right.
So yeah, well, neat reflection on Lobster Fest. To Bruce Malo, thanks Bruce, great job. Many of you didn't realize that his trip was a little different this year in that made it wonderfully up to New England, to Boston, got loaded up, had great coolers and equipment, but on the way home he came back the coastline, really through coastal Virginia and Eastern Shores,
Yeah.
and then got caught coming across 17 Mile Bridge where without a cover on the back, just cooler sealed tight, one in the truck, they wouldn't let him pass. So his wife had to drive up, Kim, taking a second vehicle with a more of a covered back to pick up Bruce and the coolers to get him back here in time. So thanks Kim as well.
Oh, yeah.
So neat event. So that was definitely noteworthy. Anything else you want to reflect on from last week?
That was the main thing. I know the whole community was just buzzing with Lobster
Yeah.
Fest stuff. You know,
Yeah.
Isaiah and I were busy doing decorating things and just kind of, you know, helping residents as they came through, just knowing, okay, you know, where your seating is, helping that flow. But we talked about it too with our huddle group of this is the third year and things are just really in a good rhythm. Each year it just gets better and better. So.
Well, and I think it does give you something to build on. As you're mentioning, talking to Julie and talking to Bruce, as you plan other events now, to the residents, it's fun food, it's a theme, and they see a lot of us just interacting.
Yeah.
And you can now do that in so many ways. So that is great. So I had fun last week. I do my weekly trivia, and I had to pull out lobster trivia. So Boy, that one fact, the largest lobster, this goes back to 1977, Nova Scotia. And if you want to guess it, it's not your trivia, but it is my trivia. It was a pretty significant size lobster. And then the other one is, how old can a lobster live? And that's another interesting question. So I'm not trying to tease them like you, but that one really surprised me.
Me too, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this week,
Yeah, we've got some fun things coming up this week too.
Yeah.
So Monday is our usual karaoke, 3 p.m. in the Chesapeake Room, which has had a really good following so far. I'm happy to see that. Tuesday, Oktoberfest celebration. So this is one of our big pairings with dining, and Julie and I have been working. Julian and I have been working very closely on this, but having a whole buffet that Uwe has even approved of, German theme. And then we're going to have a sauerkraut band in the Chesapeake Room.
very good.
Yeah.
So the buffet then will go on in the Regatta Grill, Mariners,
Yes.
entertainment.
Starts at
thereafter.
7. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good. Well, and for me, Oktoberfest makes sense for October. I know that Germans do it in September. I don't get that. How do
Me
they
neither.
how do they call it Oktoberfest? But I guess
know.
you know what I bet it was. They just got so anxious for all the great food and drinking beer.
Right.
They just kept on probably moving it closer and closer.
Right.
And maybe someday their Oktoberfest will be in August.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Uwe, tell us the practicality of that. Help us. Is that German efficiency?
Right.
So,
That would be fun.
well, I don't know. I have to guess whether it's sauerbraten or Wiener Schnitzel or whatever the foods are.
Yeah, and they're gonna have beer and pretzels, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be it's a really nice menu. So I think
Good.
everybody will really appreciate that.
Good.
That's 2 weeks back to back with.
That is. Well,
Yeah.
a neat thing. So definitely look forward to that, and just a little different type of flair. So if for some reason you were allergic to shellfish or lobster wasn't your thing, I think you'll find a lot of nice, good comfort things on this German menu.
Most definitely. So that's Tuesday. Then Wednesday, we have our Medicare education sessions. So we have Margie from home office
Yeah.
coming down to do these sessions. You have 2 to choose from. One is at 10 a.m. or 1:30 in the Chesapeake Room. So these sessions are all about helping you understand options and, figuring out the complicated world that can be.
It is. Medicare, as many of you learned as you turned 65, now it's even 62, it has that A, B, C, and D. Then you got all this commercialization of people trying to get you to buy a Medicare Advantage program. And Margie Kelly has worked with LifeSpire for a number of years and handles billing, handles a number of things. She sees the ins and outs. She knows when certain healthcare providers don't accept a plan. And people may have chosen this Medicare Advantage plan and come to realize they've really forfeited a lot of their benefits to local providers.
Right.
So what Margie's going to do is to really be factual. She's not selling any product. She's merely telling you the facts about how does it align with what we do here, service providers in our area. And for any of you who may be, well, I think I'm going to jump into this open enrollment this year and go to a Medicare Advantage program, she'll help you think through that and whether it is a good decision or not for you. So, excellent education, and I think it's open if any family members want to
yes,
come.
most
So if a
definitely.
son or daughter or someone else wants to come, be educated about Medicare Advantage and Medicare choices. Definitely a very worthy educational event, and I imagine we'll do it probably yearly hereafter.
Yeah, and I think that's good because we'll have new residents coming in, and like you said, it's an unbiased. They're not trying to sell you anything.
Yep.
Just getting some actual factual information is always helpful.
Yeah.
For sure.
So that's good education.
Yeah.
So we'll call that under Chesapeake University.
Yes.
Everything. Educational, experiential, Chesapeake University.
Especially if we're gonna do it yearly, for sure.
Good.
So that's Wednesday. Thursday we have hymn sing, 2 p.m. Chesapeake Room, and then that evening the Virginia Symphony Orchestra, music of Fleetwood Mac. Very interesting. This is a resident suggestion.
Yeah.
So we're having a lot of the newer folks giving us some different musical choices of things that they want to
Very
see, and
nice.
I like that. So that's at 6:45, leaving from the Hampton entrance on Thursday. Friday, we have a lunch bunch trip to Tucano's Brazilian restaurant and city center there at 11:30. Golden Hour with Bucky at 3 p.m. and then a Chesapeake University visit to Western Caribbean at 7:30.
Very good.
Yeah, so full week.
And who's doing that Western Caribbean? Is that a presentation?
It's a presentation. Yeah,
So
it's gonna be
who's
Al.
Al was doing
Yeah.
it? Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is good. Western Caribbean.
Yeah.
Done that a few times. In fact, even have it planned this year over the New Year holiday.
Okay.
So I'll be back down that area.
Very nice.
I may take some pictures,
Yeah,
but then again, if
definitely.
Al already handles it capably, wonderful.
He does a good job.
It does. So some good events this week. That is great. You know, I think after that hurricane of a couple weeks ago, oh my gosh, we really haven't talked about it, but how we all watch a hurricane and we worry about it, and then we see the devastation.
I know.
In our case, we breathe a sigh of relief.
Mm-hmm.
But those people that are just still without homes,
I
or
know.
I hope all power's back on, but
Yeah.
water, and it's not just, you know, Florida being devastated so terribly, but Puerto Rico the second time in just a couple years.
I know.
Our Rotary Club, we did a couple special collections just to get some money and cash, and we always have confidence. And when we send it to Rotary and Rotary International, it gets into the hands of Rotary clubs, who then put money right where it needs to go into helping people. So it works well. But we were very blessed that we had an insignificant occurrence here.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a significant occurrence at my home because
Did
I had
you?
2 pine trees come down in my backyard. And, you know, we heard them
And these are
crack.
big trees.
Yes, big trees. So it's all forest or wooded behind us, and we have a small creek that goes down to the side. And so, yeah, we weren't expecting anything. You know, that's kind of like how it is. You just think, oh, this isn't really going to affect
Yeah.
us much. It's just rain.
Yeah.
But turns out they were some dead trees. So I have 2 big trees sitting in my backyard right now
Oh, wow.
that we have to get some quotes because it's just, my husband and I attempted cleaning it up ourselves and we were way in over our heads.
Yeah.
Way.
Well, I think the biggest risk and worry here is how, with the damage of trees to homes, cars, whatever, is just pray no one gets injured. But ooh, it's costly.
I know it is. Yeah.
I don't have any in our property, but our both adjoining neighbors do, and we've got big trees that could land and hit homes. And
Yeah.
gosh, pray for our safety and my
Scary.
neighbors. But ooh, glad you guys were okay.
I know. I'm very thankful that it wasn't on
Yeah.
the house. That was great. But
Yeah.
little things like that. You just,
Yeah.
the rain and the wind will do it.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you had that experience. Hopefully, for any of you residents, no family or other concerns. We were tracking, one of our current directors, Kat, who's our human resource director of parents, and she was very worried and watching them, and they're okay, but it was a little bit of nerve wrack. We've had a little conversation with Heather,
Yes.
and Heather Wheeler's reported that
Yeah.
it did okay. A little different with her sort of hunkering down with mom, dad, and some animals,
A
and
whole
et cetera, with
house,
her.
yes.
So
She had a
good
lot
for,
going
but
on.
I think all safe, so that is good. Yeah, I have a sister who has a home down in Marco Island, and miraculously it didn't get touched
Wow, that's amazing.
because above it is Fort Myers and
Yeah.
Naples, and those areas were some devastation.
Really
So
hit.
they were just amazing where a storm hits, how those winds flow, and so anyways, enough on that. So, anything else that we want to look ahead to?
Well, do we want to do a positive spin here and move on to brain teaser?
We can. So you're going to have to obviously answer from last week for all
Yes.
of the curious minds.
This one was a little tricky, and I thought this would be easier. So it's always interesting to see what people get and don't get. So recap from last week. It was you're in a cabin with no electricity. Come nightfall, you have a candle, a wood stove, and a gas lamp, but only one match. What do you light first?
See, I'd like the match.
That's the answer. But I've had so many people who didn't get that. And
Okay.
I really thought that one was an obvious one. But
Yeah.
So the answer is a match. That's the
Yeah.
first thing you have to light, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So that one was tricky. It stumped a few people. All right, so this week. Upon taking his car to a hotel, a man immediately declares bankruptcy. What's the reasoning? Upon taking his car to a hotel, a man immediately declares bankruptcy. What's the reasoning? So send me your answers. Tell me in the hallway. Call me, email me.
I could see how that one could get a lot of very funny or sarcastic
I
answers.
think so too.
Boy, I'm coming up with a couple right now, so that may be more fun. Some
Yes.
of your answers.
This one was a little interesting to see what people are going to say.
Good.
So we'll find out.
Real fine. Well, the brain teasers are good, so that's great. I know next week I'll be with you. The week after, you have to replace me with one of the wonderful other fill-ins. I'll be at a conference for a few days,
Okay.
and so that, and then gee, many before we know it, Halloween,
Yes.
and then I'm already start thinking about, once I hit October, I start thinking about when am I gonna get apples and the pie social.
Yes.
Now, I mean, you got Oktoberfest, but you're still shifting gears, thinking about
Oh, I'm going to be
Christmas
in
at the
full-blown
Chesapeake.
Christmas mode here within the week.
Yeah.
I've already sent a few emails to my other folks who I collaborate with that,
Yeah.
Lobsterfest is over. I'm going to be in full-blown Christmas mode.
Very cool.
So
Well,
it'll be fun.
well, I know you're doing a great job planning. Got a lot of great
Thank you.
team, and so it will be excited to see what's planned and comes next. Alrighty. Well, today we're going to have another interesting interview with one of our own residents, and you're going to see him quickly and understand that it will be a session you want to listen to. He's rather fascinating, and you're going to. Hello, and welcome to this portion of Chesapeake Today. As always, we have wonderful interviews with residents, and this has been a delightful new feature. And today we have none other than Al Kunkel. There he is. Al, great having you today.
Thank you.
Well, sir, I know as I've chatted with you in the past, meeting you and Gene up in your apartment, learned a lot. But today is an opportunity for other residents to maybe get to know you a little bit better, learn more about you. So why don't we go back? Where are you originally from? Some of your early memories and roots.
I was born in northeastern corner of Indiana in a town called Angola, and I grew up there, went to high school there, etc. And then after graduation, I decided I need to go to college. And so, where? Well, my brother, who's 4 years older, went to Purdue University.
Yeah, just down the road from Angola.
Down.
Yeah.
And he was going to become a chemical, well, in fact, no, he was still in school, chemical engineer.
Yeah.
So, typical high school graduate, I have no clue what I wanted to do. So I decided, well, I'm going to go to Purdue and I'm going to be a chemical engineer. Even though I hated chemistry.
Yeah. But it's something about, see, I followed an older sister who went to Miami of Ohio, probably as much because she was there.
Right.
I too started out in engineering. I didn't say chemical, I was biomedical.
All right.
So I understand. So now you're starting to find your way. So what happens then? Did you go to Purdue?
Yes, I did. And I spent 1 year there.
Okay.
And I flunked out because I did not like chemistry.
Okay.
And so anyway, after I got out, I decided, well, I want to go in the military. Well, my brother, being in the Navy, tried to convince me to go in the Navy. And of course, I am not a swimmer. I'm not particularly fond of water. And being in a submarine underwater, which is the only thing I could think of, would happen to me, I decided I would rather be in the air. So I went to the Air Force.
Aha. So did you enlist then? And
Yes,
you
I did.
start out?
Yeah,
Excellent. Okay.
And my enlistment involved determining whether I wanted to be a pilot or a navigator. Well, everybody wants to be a pilot, but I could not get into pilot training for like 10 or 12 months. But I could get in navigator training right now. And so I went to navigator training and went to school in Texas and then went to school in California and then went to my first operational base in South Carolina, which was in a reconnaissance outfit.
Okay.
Most people don't understand reconnaissance of old because today we've got the satellites and they do all that stuff. But we used to, quote, take pictures. And of course, to get a picture of something, you either have to be near it and take a side view of it or over it to take. And at that time, it was straight cameras, and we could take pictures from up to 25, 23,000 foot because we had huge focal length cameras. And so then flew there at Shaw Air Force Base, and Jean and I, my wife, actually were stationed there 4 different times because that happened to be the only reconnaissance base in the United States.
So when I hear reconnaissance, then I'm hearing the photography and that piece that you did. So then, sometimes today I think about those planes that have like what I call like antennas or like satellites on them. Is that current day
Yes.
reconnaissance?
Yes.
But your photography. And what type of planes were these that you
Okay.
were first?
We were
oriented to?
taking black and white
Yeah.
photography at that time, and the first plane that I was in was the Douglas RB-66.
Okay.
It was a A3D version from the Navy, and so it was converted. Typical, in my mind at least, military and government, they took a perfectly good A3D from the Navy, took the engines off, and put underpowered engines on it, and sold it to the Air Force. And so we at the time, though, were the fastest cruising bomber, and it was a bomber that was converted. We typically cruised at 450 miles an hour. And most other planes were in the 300s.
But you said these were undersized engines. That sounds like it was pretty good speed, though.
We got good speed once we got to altitude.
Okay.
But the problem was it was slow getting there.
Okay.
It's like you are walking up a stairway and you have to use your rollator.
Yeah.
That it's just very, very slow to. Once we got to altitude, we could really go. But then we also flew what they call low level, and that was around 2,000 feet.
Okay.
And I've got a story a little bit later that I'll tell you.
So the Air Force then career started, and I mean we'll get some other stories within it, but just
Okay.
to put parameters on it, start to finish, how many years were you involved?
I was in the Air Force 23 years.
Fantastic. Okay.
Well, actually, 20 days short of 23 years.
It's okay. We'll
But
count
close enough, we'll round it off.
Absolutely. Wonderful service.
Yeah.
So that and navigation throughout that time?
Well, I was an instructor in the Air Force, both in the aircraft itself and in how to be an instructor. So I'm very, very comfortable in front of people and speaking, and that's why I got involved with what we call today, and which you're involved with, a visit to the CU series.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is wonderful. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that Chesapeake
Okay.
University, but let's keep going. So, you and Jean, how did you meet? Where were you at that time? Was she in Indiana? Was she a Hoosier, or how did you meet Jean?
We were in the same high school class
In Angola.
in Angola, Indiana, and we graduated together, and then she went off to college, and I went off to the military.
Okay.
She went to Tennessee, and I came back to South Carolina. And as I understand it, my mother was talking to her mother and said that I had just been reassigned to South Carolina. And so her mother, being a good mother, said, "Well, do you have his phone number?" And she said, yes, gave it to her. Her mother gave Jean the phone number, and she called me.
So now can I someday collaborate this fact?
You collaborated with her.
That's what I was going to do.
But she called me, and I went up to visit her. And let me see, we were married then probably a little over a year later. I married her on the night before her graduation from college.
Very good.
And then we took all her stuff back down to South Carolina, where we established our home and had our kids.
Fantastic. So how many children?
We have three.
Okay.
We have two boys and a girl. The only grandchildren we have came from our daughter. Our two sons, one in Houston, Texas, and the other in Tampa, Florida, do not have any children. They have dogs.
Yeah.
And no, I am not a grand dog fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, our daughter is about 3 miles from here.
Okay.
And so she has just entered the empty nest domain because her daughter has gone to college. And her son, one son is in Portland, Oregon, and the other son is there, but he tends to stay with his dad.
So it sounds like between your sons being out of state, now you're witnessing some grandchildren spreading their wings, work,
Exactly.
school, whatever. Well, makes it interesting to keep a touch of things. And I imagine in your life, having lived in different states, your service, I'm sure some overseas adventures
Right.
we'll hear about. It's pretty much your world. You've always connected people at a distance, whatever, and that's sort of the
Right.
norm. Not always ideal, but I get it.
Well, once I got out of the military, then I worked for Langley Federal Credit Union for 18 years.
Okay.
And I was I trained the tellers, I trained the loan officers. And so, again, training and speaking in public is kind of in my blood.
Yeah.
It doesn't. My wife says she can see when I've got something coming up. She can see me tense up a little bit, but I deny that.
Yeah. Well, you keep doing that. So I have to go back and knowing that Jean is such an accomplished musician. Boy, I'm sure she was a pretty woman. You met her from high school and into college, and then she has this added gifts of multiple instruments. So do you have any musical talents?
No. Well, I play the radio,
Yeah.
but other than that,
so it's definitely lopsided in the family when it comes to
I
that.
can read music,
Yeah.
but I don't particularly like to be pinned to a bass or to a baritone or to a tenor position. I like to do my own thing,
Yeah.
and when the notes get a little high, I prefer to octave down
Yeah.
or whatever. But yeah, Jean taught piano in fact, she taught the first year we were here, but she's been teaching piano for probably 45 years or so.
Amazing.
And it just
And the
amazes me.
recitals and things I know she had a couple here,
Yeah,
had to be quite fulfilling for you to witness how she changed those kids' lives.
exactly. It's and she added the harp, and she loves the harp, and she's frustrated because she can't play the harp as well as she plays the piano. I mean, she can ad lib on the piano,
Yeah.
but on the harp, she's pretty well stuck to the notes that she's supposed to be playing. And some days we have this conversation that her fingers are not connected to her brain.
Well, knowing her skill set, I still think she's a wonderful musician. Harp, though, wow, that's quite an instrument. And for having, I call it the full-size harp. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just
hers is
large.
hers is a grand, and
Yeah.
it's got a whole bunch of strings, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. I love to have her practice early in the morning, and I'm still in bed, and I wake up and I think, now, am I in heaven hearing the harp and the angels, or oh no, that's my wife practicing.
Yeah, very fine. Well, so we hear about kids, hear about your Air Force. I know, as we talked previously, you had an unusual situation. If you want to take some time to walk us through, it seems like a pretty fascinating story.
I call it the night they tried to kill me. And it was in Vietnam, and we were flying reconnaissance missions over there. And if you can imagine, we had it was called infrared technology that picks up heat. And so we were flying, and infrared is only good up to about 2,000 foot. So we're flying at 2,000 foot in North Vietnam, in the mountains, which are 5,000 and 6,000 feet, and we are going down the valley. And so if you can imagine, it is dark, and I am navigating, and I've got us on track going down. We're tracking a road looking for campfires from the North Vietnamese. We had gotten in other intelligence that there was a new surface-to-air missile site just up the valley. But we needed pictures, are they coming down or not? So we took off, we got up there. We're flying down between the mountains, and I was talking to the pilot, and I says, okay, with that new site, we're 30 miles out. Well, the surface-to-air missiles that they were using were pretty accurate at 20 to 21 miles. And so we're not particularly interested, and I said, okay, at 25 miles, I said, we're 25 miles out. If they are seeing us, if it is a site, they should start paint. In other words, their radar would start picking us up, and we would have indication of that. I had no longer said that than our indicator lit, saying you are being painted. And I immediately looked, and we were like 23 miles out. Well, when you consider that we're traveling 7 miles a minute, 2 miles go by very rapidly.
Yeah.
And so our standard operating procedure was we were unarmed. Reconnaissance was not allowed to be armed.
Yeah.
And so we go and pull out. And I look back at that. Had they been able to fire on us, they were trying to kill us.
Yeah.
But what I look back on, when we pulled up to get out of there, what did we do? We gave them the flat side of our airplane to paint. To the best of our knowledge, they did not fire on us. But it was probably the scariest moment in my life, in that thinking, they're serious about this.
Yeah.
They want to kill us. And that's why I call it the night they tried to kill us.
Yeah.
And it was
Fascinating. Well, and when you describe that, it even has just recently watched with son visiting the latest Top Gun Maverick.
Oh.
And it has some reminiscence
Yes.
of that, flying through a valley, missiles, keeping
Right.
an eye on things, and just being in that vulnerable state and not knowing. And here you're going to check out something that
Right.
in essence could be the very source of a missile coming at you.
Yeah, well, when we got back on the ground, we verified that they did in fact have a missile out there, because it was coming from right where the intel had painted
Said
that
it,
it would
yeah.
possibly be. And so, yeah, it was, even now, it kind of cranks me up a little bit.
To just to see about it. I could understand. So sound like during the Korean War was a significant piece that the story you're sharing with us, Al, then this incident was in North Vietnam?
Correct.
Okay, so a good piece of your career then in the Air Force was surrounding that war then.
That was one of them, yeah. Again, I was there temporary duty for about 6-8 weeks.
Okay.
And then I went back permanently for supposedly a year. But because of our flights into North Vietnam, etc., I actually ended up only there being 8 months.
Okay.
But it was
Well,
something different that you
again-
really cannot comprehend unless you have been there.
Absolutely. But I mean, no, even you just telling me that story, though, I could feel the anxiety.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Well, you know, and when I hear you, and obviously some of our other residents who've had the service, such as yourself, others, Air Force or other, you know, space or
Right.
air experience, I just marvel at that. So fascinating. So then, you and Jean then proceeded on beyond the military life, raising your young kids. You had that additional work
Right.
with
At
the
Langley,
bank at
Langley
Langley.
Federal Credit Union for
So
18
that was
years.
great. And then at some point you decide, hey, we're going to think about a retirement location. So sort of then brought you through all of that impressive life and experiences to were there other things you're considering? Was Chesapeake the place, or how did you get to know about this
Well,
community?
again, we decided I had a 5 bypass open heart surgery in 2010, and it really came on very quickly. I had no idea that I had heart problems, and all of a sudden I was in the hospital. In about 2016, we joined the Chesapeake Club,
Yeah.
and we were in it for a couple of years, and then I decided we need to have a retirement home other than the house. I am getting tired of mowing yard. I'm getting tired of painting rooms. And so we started looking around, and I have to really credit Liz G as the main emphasis. She's the one that almost like mothered us.
To make that decision and think about it.
We looked at 3, 4 other different places, and it came down to the friendliness that was here at the Chesapeake. And I've heard other people mention that also, that the friendliness of the staff, the friendliness of the residents. When you see somebody that's got a little blue ribbon on their name tag and they're standing there just looking around, don't walk by them.
Yeah.
Say, can I help you? And typically, this is a huge place.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to go from, we had been here for, probably 3, 4 weeks. And Jean came out of the dining room, walked down the hall, and to go to the Newport, we turned right. Well, she made a mistake and turned left. Ended up out in the Yorktown. And one of the staff could see that she was flustered. Can I help you? And she says, yes, I'm trying to get back to my apartment. Well, where do you live, ma'am? In the Newport. Oh, that's on the other end of the, and he literally walked her from the Yorktown back to our apartment.
Good.
That's the friendliness that we see here.
Yeah.
And that kind of confirmed that we made a good choice.
Good. Well, it's always just very heartwarming to hear stories like that, because that's, I think, what you and I want to pride ourselves.
Exactly.
In this ongoing culture of friendliness, just being that, it's what you and all the other residents accomplish, what we try to support.
Right.
And it's been I just think it speaks volumes for why we're such high occupancy. People want to be here, and hopefully that great resident satisfaction. So I know that there's been a lot of music that Jean's introduced to us during her time with us, and that's been delightful. We referenced that Chesapeake University,
Right.
and I sometimes would call them travel logs, and you refer to them as
A visit to, it used to be Travelog, but then we kind of got out of the Travelog into, and so I've just found
visit to.
Yeah,
Excellent.
A visit to.
Any idea how many of those have now occurred here?
No.
I mean, it's got to be what?
We started, well,
couple
we do
dozen,
them monthly. We do them on the second Friday
Yeah.
of the month at 7:30, except for November when that happens to be Veterans Day.
Yeah.
But I started those back when I was chairman of the activities committee. So we're coming up on probably 3.5 years at one a month.
That's
So
great.
it's a bunch.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great. I know you've led a number of them, so thank you. I think we both sort of have some fun in that, and I think it's something similar we share in that to tell stories,
Right.
to share experiences. It's a blessing, and I know I certainly get a kick out of it. You know, oftentimes though, you have to double check with David, how's that presentation coming? And you know
yes.
me, I'm always saying it's coming together, Al.
But you always have the advantage of you always have food.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether they're coming for the food or actually. Oh no, that's.
Well, now, see, as I said, you're right. I have to bribe people. You see, you provide great content. I have to have something extra to lure them in. So I think you have nailed it. That's correct. So that's been a wonderful piece, and that whole vision of Chesapeake University, and you just really latched on to that visit, that experience, and what I'm so struck by is how well traveled our residents are, and that even with that, some still want to go to other places.
Right.
And I know of ones you've taken them on and trips I've taken them on. It's just been a delight to share
Well,
those stories.
I want to piggyback on what you've just said. I am running out of places that I have been.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have residents step up. I've got a couple that are thinking about it.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of experience out there, and oh, well, I can't speak. Okay, I will put it together. I will do it to your presentation with you there. I mean, offer what you've got. It
Yeah.
may be a job. We've had some job
Yeah.
people. We've trip places. A lot of the times, a visit to people have, well, maybe 3, 4 in the audience have ever been there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just
Well,
help.
it is. Well, I hear that, and hopefully other residents are picking up on it, that, if you have some experiences, you may not be as comfortable in putting some things together. Resource between Al, myself, Candace, we can all assist with it. Because, I've gotten better every time I've played around with my
Yeah.
PowerPoints and trying to insert text and other things.
Right.
And so it's good. But definitely it's an effective way to give residents a chance to grow and learn a little
Well,
bit more.
again, with my teaching background and preparation and everything, I am comfortable working with residents on where you've been. And the main thing that I don't want it to be is a me show. When somebody has traveled they've got pictures of themselves and they want to put in 70 pictures of them and their family. No. We're interested in the place,
Yeah.
not you. And most of the people don't typically take a lot of pictures. But when I come back from one of my trips, I'll have between 900 and 1,000 pictures
Yeah. Yeah.
to choose from.
Yeah.
And so it's easier that way. But I will help. I will create. We can get it done if you are willing to share your story with the rest of the people. There's a lot of jobs that people here as residents have had.
Yeah, that
That-
could be another visit too. Visit
Exact-
to this workplace, to the
That's
shipyard,
exactly.
to NASA, whatever.
That's exactly.
Well, I think residents should be hearing loud and clear that, hey, life experiences, let's share them. You've got an opportunity now for Al to assist. And again, it could be a future edition of a visit. So great. Well, Al, just this time together again. I've always enjoyed chatting with you. You've got the sense of humor, which you've exercised today, and I always appreciate your dry sense of humor. But wonderful, and hear a little bit more about you and Jean and your admiring that young woman even in high school, and what a life you've had together.
Right.
So wonderful.
It's been a good life.
Well, absolutely. Well, in years to come and enjoying it here, so I appreciate it. Well, this will then end another segment, another interview with one of our most interesting residents, Al Kunkel. Appreciate your time today, Al.
Thank you.
And until next time, take care.